Hello, Mordimer here, and today I would like to show you the game from round 6 of Magnus Carlsen Invitational 2020. And I choose the game between Magnus Carlsen, who's gonna play as white, and Jan Nepomniachtchi from Russia, who's gonna play as black. Magnus Rapid ranking 2881, he is current world champion, triple world champion. He is world champion in the standard time control, rapid, and also in the blitz. And Jan Nepomniachtchi rankings 2778. However, Jan Nepomniachtchi is one of the players who has a positive score against Magnus Carlsen. So he won more the games than he lost. And both of the players are 29 years old, so they played many times, so they know each other very well. And the game is very interesting. That's the first game of their match. The match ended in a draw. There was 2-2, and then Magnus Carlsen managed to win in the Armageddon. But this is the game number 1, so without further ado, let's jump into the game. We have e4 by Magnus Carlsen, and here not e6, which Jan Nepomniachtchi sometimes played last month. It's like his new opening. But he goes for his favorite Sicilian defense, so we have c5, knight on f3, and d6. We have d4, c takes on d4, and knight takes on d4. And here, knight f6, so pretty standard stuff. And here white, of course, want to protect the pawn. That's the very normal approach, the most popular. So knight on c3 is of course possible, f3 is also possible, even bishop on d3 is sometimes played. All of these moves support the pawn on e4. However, Magnus play bishop on c4, completely confusing the audience, but it's not first time he played that. And now, take this pawn or do not take this pawn? That's the question. If we take a look into the database, we have a couple of games there, and nobody actually on the top level take that pawn. So the players definitely don't know the continuation, and it's quite complicated. They prefer to go for some safe variation and play something like e6. And after knight on c3, because now all the tricks would not work, we have Sozin attack in the Sicilian defense, so black can play bishop on e7. And then bishop on b3, castle, bishop e3, just normal development, knight a6, for example f4, this is also a popular line, knight on c5, and the game can continue. Both sides have the equal chances. Also a6 is possible, so more like Najdorf style, bishop on b3, then b5, castle, and then after bishop on e7, for example, queen on f3, with the idea of pushing e5, okay, and winning the rook. Of course, it can be countered quite easily. Queen on c7, and if the pawn is pushed, then bishop on b7. So this is, of course, everything very popular, and it was played many times. However, Jan just immediately take the pawn on e4. So what is the problem with this move? There is totally no problem. It's good move, but black has to play very precise. So black has to know the line, definitely. Now, the main ideas here first would be bishop on f7 and another queen on h5. Bishop on f7, it's quite sharp, but also quite interesting. After king on f7, white actually can take back the knight, but not queen on f3. This actually doesn't work because knight just retreat to f6. But after queen on h5, g6, queen d5, winning back the knight. But there is very interesting line here, what's going on later. And nobody actually bothered to reveal it, so I would like to show you, because it's very nice tactic, so you can, sharpen your tactical skills. After king on g7, queen on e4, e5, and what would you play now? The moves recommended by the engine are, for example, knight on e2, knight on f3, and all is good with these moves. However, if you take a look closely, there is one interesting move. Queen on b7, okay? Forking the king and the rook. So black doesn't have much choice and gonna take with the bishop, okay? Otherwise they're gonna lose. But look at this. Now this knight can jump to e6. Bang. That's quite beautiful. However, it doesn't really work in the white's favor. I mean, it's okay. This is still playable. So bishop on b7, knight e6 with check. Now king g8, knight d8, but there is the problem, bishop on g2. So winning the pawn, and now you know, the material is equal. This knight can actually escape. There are no moves like bishop on d5, so rook on g1, and there is nothing like bishop on d5. Try to, you know, trap the knight, because knight on c3 solve all the problems, okay? So everything is fine, the game can continue. However, Magnus Carlsen didn't go for this line, and it's, as you see, not really great. He goes for much better move, queen on h5. And now this is the threat, okay? And it's quite serious threat, so black has to do something about that. Now, g6 definitely doesn't work, because queen d5, and now winning the knight, or attacking f7. So you have to choose. If you want to save the knight, then you have to face this attack, and I'm not sure you want to, you know, play this against Magnus Carlsen. So king c7, now knight on b5 with check, now king c6, knight from the first rank to c3, and look at this position. I don't think you would like to play against Magnus Carlsen. He gonna checkmate pretty fast or win the material. All his pieces are developed, the bishop can be developed also, just castle, bring also the rook to the attack, and that's gonna be devastating. So definitely g6 doesn't really work here. What have to be played is e6. But it's not so obvious how to attack as white. There is only actually one way to do it correctly. So, for example, if you take, you know, bishop on e6, it doesn't work, because bishop e6, now knight e6, and queen e7. This is the only winning move, and if black find queen on e7, look at this queen. Queen just are deadly on this open file, okay? So, the knight is coming with the check and attack on the queen if this knight is moved, and if the knight is not moved, then black just win the piece and the game, of course. And queen b5, like tricks like this also doesn't work, because simply knight c6, and you still can't escape with this knight, okay? For example, knight on d4, it doesn't really matter, because still knight on c3 winning the queen, okay? So it doesn't really matter where you are, you still, you know, the queen on h5, on b5, it's still the same pattern, very nice pattern anyway. So bishop on e6 doesn't work here. What else can be played? The only move in this position is actually bishop on b5. It's quite counterintuitive moving again with the bishop, but this is the plan here. And now black have to be very precise still. So the opening is not bad, because black have to really think what they are doing, and it's not easy. For example, bishop on d7 is not really great, because after knight on e6 there are some troubles, as you see. So for example, knight on f6 with attack on the queen, we would have knight on d8. Knight h5, now bishop d7, knight on d7, and now this knight can't actually escape, okay? b7, and just escape and everything is fine, white just stand better. Queen on f6, that would have to probably be played with some threats on f2. However, knight f4 and everything is fine here. g5 is possible, so knight can't be moved, but white also can play f3, attack this knight. Okay, so can exchange the minor pieces, or knight on c5, now bishop d7, knight d7, knight e2, and also white stands pretty good here and can continue the game. Black gonna have the problems with the castle, where to hide the king, so pretty okay, everything would be okay. So definitely not bishop on d7. Knight b on d7 is much better here. And now knight on e6 is a quite different story. I want to show you one more line here. For example, queen on a5. If you don't want to exchange the queens, queen on a5, it doesn't work because simply knight on c3. And you see the idea already? This queen actually is, you know, on the same rank like the queen. So they are looking at each other. The problem is the white bishop can, you know, take on d7 with check. So for example, knight on c3 just doesn't work because of this bishop d7, okay? Bishop on d7, and now queen a5 winning the queen. Bishop e6, and of course it's queen for the bishop, so white's gonna win the game. So not this way. Knight on f6 has to be played. This is the only move, and now knight on d8, knight on h5, and bishop d7. This is the only way to save this knight, otherwise the knight is trapped. So bishop on d7, and now if king takes, then the knight can escape this way. If bishop on d7, then knight b7, bishop c6, attacking the knight and attacking g2. Here is the problem with bishop on d7 and exchanging the bishop. That was not the case, but now as you see, with the bishop still on the board, that can equalize, and even black gonna stands better here. So knight e5, now bishop g2, rook g1, bishop e4 with the attack on c2, and now c4 is possible. This is one way of playing, or rapid development of the pieces, and the position is very open, so it's pretty rich in a lot of tactics. So both sides have to be very careful, and this rook still staring on g7. So black can't, you know, really easy just hide with the king. They need couple of tempi. So definitely very interesting position. So this was probably what Magnus Carlsen had in mind. However, for some reason, he said after the game that he had, like, you know, some kind of blackout, and he just don't remember what to play. Suddenly, you know, his mind stopped working, and he chose maybe the worst option here. He played knight on e6. Okay, so in the move number 7, he just blundered the game. We had the bishop on e6, now bishop on e6 and queen on e7, and we already know that pattern, that is very dangerous. And again, queen on b5 just doesn't work. Of course, knight d7 would be disaster, because queen can exchange, and then white would stand better here. So knight on c6 solving all the problems, bishop f7, and actually that would happen pretty similar stuff like in the game. After castle, black has just extra piece, and then the game is easily won. Magnus Carlsen play bishop on f7 with check. We have queen on f7, and now queen e2. So now pinning this knight, threatening any f3, but simply queen e7, and there are no more threats. We have the castle by Magnus Carlsen. Knight on f6, asking you want to exchange the queens. Of course it's not possible, so bishop on e3, and now knight on c6. Normal developing move. So Jan Nepomniachtchi is up the minor piece, and he just developed the pieces. Don't want to risk any complicated games. That's what he's gonna play. Magnus Carlsen play knight on c3. We have d5, now threatening d4, and Magnus Carlsen actually allowed that. Queen on f3, this is what he played, and now we don't have d4. D4 creates a lot of complications. So for example, its correct move is actually the best move in the position, but after d4, rook f on e1, what would you play here? Try to think about this position. What would you play as black? Would you take the knight, or you would take the bishop? It's very sneaky idea here, okay? If you take the knight, which is pretty logical, you actually lose the game, because bishop c5, okay? Pinning the queen, and actually white gonna equalize the game, okay? So not this way, but d takes on e3 actually works, okay? And black gonna win. And it looks like it's not logical, but actually that's what's gonna happen. Rook on e3, okay? And now knight e5 defending and attacking the queen. Very nice tempo. Queen on e2, now attacking the knight. Knight f on d7 defending, and now f4 winning back the material, but that's simply castle. White gonna get back the material, however they are still, you know, down the piece. So quite unexpected, but yeah, that was too much complication. Nepo just castle on the queen side. And okay, we have rook f on e1, now threatening, you know, some discoveries on the queen, so queen on d7. Nepo want to avoid that and also prepare very interesting move. Now we have knight on b5, a6, kicking the knight, and Magnus said, okay, I gonna stay with the knight here, and he play a4. And now take the knight or don't take a knight. This is another question. Taking the knight actually is the best move in the position, but again, black has to be very, very precise. So for example, a takes on b5, a takes on b5. Now look at this. Now rook can come to a8, so knight on b8, and now bishop b6 attacking the rook. And here black have to be very, very precise. A very logical move is, you know, rook on e8, but actually it's losing. That would be losing. Queen c3, and look at this. Black has nothing to do here, and they're gonna just, you know, lose the game. So of course, if knight moves, then we have this rook, and yeah, the move recommended by the engine is actually queen on c6. Okay, so sacrificing the queen, and that's the best move for black. So black would have to be very careful, and in this position, don't care about the rook and play bishop d6. Okay, that makes more sense. And after, you know, losing this exchange, it's still much better for black. 3 minor pieces for the rook, so definitely better position, winning position for black. However, Jan Nepomniachtchi play queen on d7 for a very important reason. He want to exchange the queens, and he play queen on g4. And look at the queen. Queen is trapped, so actually has nowhere to go. Okay, all the squares are covered, so Magnus Carlsen have no choice, and he has to exchange the queens. So we have queen on g4, knight takes on g4, and now Nepo can just enjoy, you know, one extra piece. Now bishop on b6 by Magnus Carlsen, we have a takes on b5, a takes on b5, and now knight on b8. Bishop on d8, king on d8, and here Magnus Carlsen play h3. However, he could try, you know, last trick in this game. He didn't do that, but this is interesting. Rook on a8, okay, attacking the knight. And what would you play as black here? You still have to be very, very careful, because if you play something like king on c8, you are losing. You are losing. Believe me or not, but rook on e8 check. And now white gonna pick up the knight, and then gonna pick up the bishop, exchange the rooks, and then with the rook against the knight, they're gonna easily win. So definitely very sneaky idea that could be. Also king on c7 doesn't work because b6, okay, and now the king has to do something, so probably I have to take the pawn. Rook on b8, and now we have the same threat here, so black would have to go on f6, but now a rook can come to a1, to a8, and it's still very dangerous, and white stands slightly better in these endings. So this was the last chance for Magnus Carlsen to play. However, black has one move which is still winning, bishop on d6. Not difficult to spot, defending the knight, also attacking h2, so that would be the idea, and white would have no counterplay anymore, no more tricks here. But as I said, Magnus play h3, so knight on f6, and now rook on a7, king on c7, and now rook e6, preparing some moves like b6. So Nepo tried to counter, we have bishop on c5, and Magnus play b6 anyway. So he sacrificed this pawn, we have bishop on b6, and now rook on c7 with check, king on d6, rook a on b7, rook was under attack. And here Nepo play knight b on d7, disconnecting these rooks. This is the only power of this rook. Now they are disconnected. Also, this rook is under attack and this rook is trapped. So actually Magnus play rook on g7, and after king on c6 he just resigned. And he resigned because he has to, you know, give this rook for the bishop, and now Nepo would have two knights extra, so definitely winning the game. So that's the game. I hope you like it, especially this some fancy lines with this, you know, queen sacrifice on g7. I really like this a lot, and then this check, that's pretty fancy, but it would not work the way we would like it to work, but it still is very nice to, you know, spot the lines like this. So if you like this video, press like. If for some reason you don't like it, press unlike. And yeah, if you don't want to miss any other material from Magnus Carlsen Invitational 2020, press subscribe, smash the bell button. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.